somebody is living in a house that they have financed currently at 2.75% on a 30-year fixed, and they want to upgrade to a bigger home. So that means higher purchase price, but also a 6% mortgage rate or 6.5%, as we have been for most of last year. So you're financing more money at a higher rate. That is really a double whammy that is hard to stomach. So that's the reason why a lot of people are not moving, because they're really handcuffed to that super low mortgage that they have on their current home.
Welcome to the Equitable Bank Smart Start podcast. I'm Mike Cottrell, Senior Vice President and President of the Rental Property Association of Wisconsin. Joining me today, and I'm welcoming him back again to the Smart Start podcast, is Marcus Auerbach, agent and owner of On Point Realty Group, a Keller Williams agency. Welcome, Marcus.
Glad to be here.
Marcus is also an executive board member of RPA. He's been a tremendous asset to the association and provides tremendous insight into the Wisconsin housing and real estate investor market. Today, we will be discussing the real estate market kind of at a high level. We're not going to get too granular. And I think that really ties together with the single family situation here in Wisconsin as well. And I know that's where, Marcus, you can provide a lot of insight to that and kind of connect the dots. Let's just first talk about inventory levels today versus historically.
We're seeing the same thing. We have a chronic housing shortage. I always mention this to people in the single family space who don't look at the data like real estate investors typically would do. We have a chronic housing shortage. This is nothing new. We have been in this situation for well over a decade now. And it's not even a matter of how many buyers and sellers we have. It's really a matter of how many people we have and how many roofs we have. And it's a factor of also demographic shifts. So first-time home buyers are now 40 years old now. So that's the latest they've ever been. And once they have decided as a generation to buy their own home, they're not abandoning that decision anymore. So it's really household formation that we're looking at when people are moving either from their rental place, or in some cases they're just still living at home and they decide, no, it's time, I want to start my own household. That is really what's driving the supply in the housing market. And we don't have a whole lot to counter that. There is not a whole lot of new construction happening. We're seeing a little bit on the multifamily space. We're seeing a little bit new construction. I mean, everybody who lives here in Wisconsin knows this. If you drive around, you see, these little subdivisions with, 20, 30 homes being built. That is not enough to change the dynamic of things. We just don't have enough housing here. So yeah, we have been in a situation with low inventory for quite a while.
Yeah, and draw that correlation between the lack of inventory and folks are staying in their homes longer, right? I think I read a number somewhere around, it used to be 8 years, now it's 11 plus maybe.
Yeah, it used to be 6 years actually. Americans used to move every 6 years, and now it's more like 10, 11 years now. There's a number of reasons for that. COVID, of course, played into that, but we also have seen mortgage rates. So it's what we refer to these golden handcuffs when somebody is living in a house that they have financed currently at 2.75% on a 30-year fixed, and they want to upgrade to a bigger home. So that means higher purchase price, but also a 6% mortgage rate or 6.5%, as we have been for most of last year. So you're financing more money at a higher rate. That is really a double whammy that is hard to stomach. So that's the reason why a lot of people are not moving, because they're really handcuffed to that super low mortgage that they have on their current home.
Yeah, and that can then, with that lack of inventory, when you've got a first-time home buyer trying to find that first property, how difficult is that for them and to be able to get into that home in a competitive market?
Yeah, the market is competitive, that's true, but I think the biggest challenge for most of them is to mentally get to the point where they want to do that, because a lot of them make the mistake that they just keep waiting for the market to, for prices to fall, for the market to get easy. And that is just not happening. I studied the data here in Milwaukee for a little over 10 years now for my YouTube channel. I post a monthly market update, and you can see it really. We have a super constant increase in property value. Every year it's between 6 and 7% of appreciation, and we have never been over that, and we've never been under that. So very, very reliable and a very steady trend that's just fueled by that situation that we have with demand and supply. And so there's really nothing on the radar right now, short of a massive black swan event that would be able to derail that dynamic that we have right now. So it's difficult for first-time homebuyers, and what they're seeing is that every year they're waiting longer. Rents are getting increased as well, so they're looking at a 5% rent increase or something along those lines, and they're also seeing property values going up. So the perceived gap that is opening up, that they have to jump to become a homeowner, that gap is getting wider and wider every year, and that's not easy for them.
Right. And that ties to the fact that the competitive market right now, the length of time these homes stay on the market.
Yeah, the market is moving with a very high velocity. So we have currently almost 50%, I think it's 49.5%, of all homes that go under contract on the first weekend. And if they go under contract in the first weekend, then it will be competitive with multiple offers, and on average currently 3.8% over list price. Now, that doesn't mean that every home is selling on that velocity. A lot of them are not selling on the first weekend. That's the other half. That is where negotiations are happening. And the trick is always to know which one is it, when you're looking at a listing, is this one that will sell in the first weekend? Will that be competitive with multiple offers? Or is this one where you can negotiate? Because it's very easy to just overpay.
So if you're working with a buyer, if you will, and you're in a competitive situation, how important is it for you to help consult and advise them as it relates to that price and to whether or not get in that bidding game?
Yeah, we try to focus a lot on education for clients, buyers and sellers. There's so much misinformation and clickbait on the internet, and that is typically what most of the information came from. So the first third of working with a new client is always educating them what's really going on. And I typically do this by showing them the data and being able to draw their own conclusions, and then going out in the market and seeing with their own eyes what I kind of told them before that they will see. But I really want them to see it with their own eyes. I just point out that pattern, and then they can verify it for themselves. And that really builds the confidence that you need to actually engage in the market.
Okay, let's flip the coin. The seller now. You want to put that seller's home on the market, and how critical is pricing that, or bringing that home to market at the right price?
Yeah, it's very easy for sellers to think, oh, the market is so hot and I can price it at wherever I want. And that goes to the other 50% that are not selling on the first weekend, where after a week or two, buyers start asking, what's wrong with this house? Why is it not selling? And that typically, triggers that dynamic where you start doing a price reduction after a few weeks because you're not getting showings, so you drop down your price. And then when you eventually get an offer, it typically is even lower than the new price because people are saying, well, your house didn't sell, everything else is selling, so it's obviously overpriced. And then you create a downward spiral, and that usually leads to an outcome that is a lot worse than if you would have started it from the right level to begin with.
Out-of-state buyers, cash offers. Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
How many of those are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, and that's one that surprises a lot of people because for the last 20, 30 years, Wisconsin has seen people leaving, and I think that is still in a lot of people's minds. And when you look at the data, we have seen a complete change in trend over the last 4 years, well, 5 now. So we have now 5 consecutive years where we have seen net migration into Wisconsin. That's a completely new thing for us. We're still not like Florida, where you have like tons and tons of people moving here. So it's happening on a small scale, but nonetheless, it's happening. People are moving back to Wisconsin. They really appreciate the lifestyle here. We work with a lot of out-of-state clients. That's a function of my YouTube channel. And so comments that I get on a regular basis are that people come here for a vacation, for a trip, to just check things out. And Milwaukee is just a lot better than they thought it would be. They talk about how friendly the people are, and they talk about Milwaukee just has a good vibe. People like it.
Is the academic piece of that still very critical in that decision where folks are looking to relocate to? School systems.
I don't think it's typically jobs or lifestyle that is driving this. So or sometimes moving back to family. There are great schools in other states too. I think typically it is because they want to get away from the heat. That's one thing that I hear a lot. It's job related. It is family related. A lot of times, it's families that used to live here and they move to somewhere in the south and now they're moving back to be with family. That is typically the common scenario.
And when you talk about family and moving back and being with family, do you see much kids moving back in with parents or vice versa, parents moving back in with kids? I guess I really should. Seniors moving back with mom and dad and having, or with their children and having an ensuite. What's that scenario like these days with our aging class?
Yeah, the demographics are always driving what's happening in real estate. So we see, for example, a lot of people moving from the suburbs, from their, what we call a trophy home. It's like your 5,000 square foot McMansion. They're selling that and they're moving into downtown. Oftentimes they're renting a condo. Milwaukee downtown has become incredibly attractive to people that are in their retirement years and they don't want to take care of a big house anymore. And they're moving into a condo downtown in the 3rd Ward or somewhere close by.
So that's the downsizing piece of it, not necessarily moving in with a child, where they're helping out there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. What about once you get that offer in, how many of these offers are waiving contingencies?
Yeah, more than I would like to see. We see a lot of cash offers. Especially in the more luxury side of things. A lot of people are taking money out of the stock market. They don't have a lot of faith in what's going to happen there in the next years. And they feel that their money is better invested in real estate. And at the same time, they're also seeing the annual appreciation, and that's a steady return. So that, I think, triggers a lot of people to move money out of stock portfolios and putting it towards real estate. That was very different. When rates were extremely low, it was a no-brainer to finance. But with the rate environment that we have today, it seems to be a really attractive choice to move money from the stock market into the real estate market. A
little bit more secure, a little bit more comfortable. So from a takeaway standpoint, based on where we're at in the market today, and it seems like it hasn't changed over the last few years, don't wait. If you find the right opportunity, take advantage.
Yeah.
Make an offer.
It has to be right for where you are in your life. It's typically a life event that is really triggering that move. I think what most people don't realize is that the state of the market is, everybody sees the market is very hot, but people don't realize that we're really in a real estate recession. I think you could also call it a real estate stagflation because the market is stagnant. We have, when you look at transaction volume, we are currently about 25%, maybe 30%, depends on which year you use as a benchmark, below historic normal transaction volumes. So fewer homes are being bought and sold. It all starts with what you mentioned earlier, that people are not as likely moving anymore, which means they're not putting the homes on the market.
Right.
So that really restricts supply. And with that, you have a really compressed marketplace. So we're seeing fewer homes being sold and bought and sold in general. And that is the part that you really have to call a real estate recession. It's been the new normal now for the last 2 or 3 years. And the confusing part is that prices are still going up. So we're still seeing that 6%, 7% price increase. So we have a stagnating market, but we also have prices steadily increasing. So that's the inflationary part of it.
Thanks again, Marcus. Really appreciate you attending the Equitable Bank Smart Start podcast. And we appreciate your time, as always.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And please join us on our next episode.